Emily Carter hit the floor so hard that the entire studio seemed to stop breathing. 1 second, she was turning toward the dream she had fought for. The next, her ankle bent under her. Her body crashed against the polished floor, and the music kept playing as if nothing had happened. Grace Carter screamed her daughter's name and ran through the circle of stunned dancers. Eleanor Hayes reached Emily first, dropping beside her with the urgency of a woman who had seen too many careers end in one careless second. But this was not careless. When Eleanor picked up Emily's ballet shoe and held the broken strap between her fingers, her face changed. It was not torn. It was sliced clean. And when Emily looked across the room, Vanessa Blake was standing near the mirror, pale, trembling, and terrified. Everyone thought Vanessa had finally gone too far. But Vanessa whispered 6 words that turned the whole room cold. I know who went near her locker. Before anyone could move, the lights went out. The studio vanished into darkness. Someone screamed. Grace threw herself over Emily as students shouted and stumbled against one another. Charles Whitmore's voice cut through the chaos, ordering everyone to stay where they were. Then the lights flashed back on, and what they revealed was worse than the fall. Emily's audition file was gone from the desk. The papers that could send her to the National Youth Audition had disappeared in less than 30 seconds. Across the mirror, written in red paint, were 3 words: "You don't belong." For a moment, Emily forgot the pain in her ankle. She forgot the watching students, the cameras, the whispers, and even Vanessa. She stared at the message as if it had been written inside her chest. Grace held her tighter and whispered, "No one gets to say that to you." But Emily could barely hear her. Charles Whitmore stepped toward the mirror, his face hard with controlled anger. He had seen money buy silence, reputation bury truth, and powerful people pretend cruelty was strategy. But this was different. This was a child being hunted inside an institution that claimed to protect talent. Mr. Albright, the academy director, rushed in, asking what had happened, but his voice carried more fear than concern. Grace turned on him with tears in her eyes and rage in her throat. "My daughter could have broken her ankle," she said. "Her file is missing. Someone threatened her on your mirror. And you are asking what happened?" Mr. Albright tried to calm the room, saying accusations were dangerous. Eleanor raised the damaged shoe and replied, "So is a cut strap." The students fell silent. Even those who had mocked Emily now looked afraid, because this no longer felt like a rivalry. It felt organized. Charles ordered the security footage reviewed immediately. He, Grace, Eleanor, Emily, Vanessa, and Mr. Albright moved toward the security room while the other students were told to remain in the hallway. Emily leaned against her mother, each step sending pain through her ankle, but the humiliation hurt more than the injury. She could feel people watching her again, not with wonder this time, but with hunger for scandal. Inside the security room, the guard clicked through the cameras with shaking hands. The hallway outside Emily's locker appeared on screen, empty at first. Then the footage skipped. The time jumped forward. The exact minutes they needed had been erased. Charles leaned close to the monitor and asked who had permission to delete footage. The guard did not answer with words. He looked toward Mr. Albright. That single glance said enough. Grace saw it. Eleanor saw it. Emily saw it too. Mr. Albright adjusted his tie and insisted there had to be a technical error. But Charles did not blink. "Was Victor in this building?" he asked. The name landed like a stone in water. Victor, the public relations advisor Charles had fired after he leaked Emily's first dance video without permission, was supposed to be gone. He was the man who had looked at Emily's pain and seen publicity. Vanessa lowered her eyes and finally spoke. She said she had seen Victor the day before near the side office, speaking privately with Mr. Albright. The director denied nothing quickly enough. Grace turned to Charles, and the betrayal on her face cut deeper than accusation. "You promised me she would be protected," she said. Charles looked at Emily, then at the erased footage, then at the man who ran the academy. "I promised," he said quietly. "And someone in this building used that promise against her." Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because what happened to Emily Carter that night was not just about a ruined audition. It was about the kind of place that welcomed poor talent only when it could be controlled, filmed, packaged, and praised from a safe distance. Emily had entered the academy as a cleaner's daughter. She had become a viral symbol without asking for it. Then, when she refused to let adults turn her life into a donation campaign, she became a problem. And problems, in places like Whitmore Ballet Academy, were not always solved honestly. Sometimes they were erased from footage. Sometimes their files vanished. Sometimes their shoes were cut before they could step onto the stage. Eleanor brought everyone into her private studio and locked the door. There were no students there, no mirrors full of gossip, no phones raised for content. Only Emily on a bench with her ankle wrapped, Grace beside her, Charles standing near the door, and Vanessa Blake trembling in the center of the room. Emily looked at Vanessa with anger and exhaustion. "You hated me from the beginning," she said. "Why should I believe anything you say now?" Vanessa swallowed, fighting tears. "Because I know what guilt feels like," she answered. "And this time, it isn't mine." Grace's eyes narrowed. "Then whose is it?" Vanessa looked toward Charles. "Victor came to my house after he was fired. He told my mother Emily was dangerous for the academy. He said people loved her because she looked pure, but if the public turned against her, everyone would forget her." Emily stared at her. "Forget me." Vanessa nodded. "That was the plan." Vanessa explained that her mother had been furious after the viral video made Vanessa look cruel. But the anger was not about morality. It was about image. Donor families were calling. Board members were embarrassed. Parents who had paid fortunes for ballet training hated watching the cleaner's daughter receive more attention than their children. Victor used that fear. He told them Emily's rise would make people ask why students like her had never been welcomed before. He said the academy could either control Emily's story or destroy it before it became too powerful. Mr. Albright, desperate to protect donations, listened. Several board families listened. Vanessa listened too, at first, because she wanted her life back. Then she heard her mother say something over the phone that changed everything. "Make sure the girl never reaches nationals." Vanessa said she did not know about the shoe until it happened, but she knew the threat was real. Emily's anger cracked into disbelief. "So adults sat in expensive rooms and decided what should happen to my life." Vanessa could not answer. Grace stood slowly, her voice shaking. "They looked at my daughter, a child, and saw a threat." Eleanor's face was cold. "No," she said. "They saw a mirror." Emily reflected what this academy pretends not to be. Charles called Judge Raymond Mercer immediately. Mercer listened to the details and then revealed another blow. An anonymous complaint had already been sent to the National Youth Ballet Committee, accusing Emily of lying about her background, receiving improper influence from Charles, and using viral publicity to pressure the academy. Grace gripped the phone and said it was all a lie. Mercer said the committee had paused Emily's evaluation pending review. Emily heard the words and felt the room tilt. She had survived humiliation, training, pain, and ridicule, only to be stopped by a letter from someone too cowardly to sign their name. For a few minutes, Emily said nothing. Her eyes stayed on the floor. Grace knelt in front of her and tried to speak softly, but Emily pulled away. "What do they want from me?" she asked. "Do they want me poor forever? Silent forever? Grateful forever?" Charles looked wounded, not because she was wrong, but because he knew she was close to the truth. Eleanor asked Vanessa if she had proof. Vanessa hesitated, then pulled out her phone. Her hand shook as she played a recording. Victor's voice filled the room, calm and ugly in its confidence. He said the public loved to rise, but loved to fall even more. He said if Emily missed the audition, Charles would look reckless, the academy would look wise, and Emily would go back where she came from. Then Vanessa's mother asked what would happen to Vanessa. Victor answered that Vanessa would become the disciplined student who survived the scandal. The recording changed the air in the room. For the first time that day, there was proof. Charles told Vanessa to send it to Mercer. Grace held Emily's hand and whispered that truth had finally entered the room. But Victor had already moved faster. Grace's phone buzzed, then Charles's, then Vanessa's. A new article had appeared online with a headline designed to wound. Viral Ballerina exposed. Cleaner's daughter story was staged by billionaire donor. The article claimed Emily's humiliation was planned, that Grace had accepted secret money, that Charles had trained Emily in private, and that Vanessa had been used as the villain in a publicity stunt. The photo attached showed Emily and Charles together, cropped to look intimate and suspicious. Within minutes, comments flooded in. People who had praised Emily now called her fake. People who had cried for Grace now called her greedy. Strangers rewrote their lives without ever meeting them. Emily dropped the phone as if it had burned her. Her breathing turned uneven. "I danced for 1 minute," she whispered, "and lost my peace for 6 months." Grace reached for her, but Emily stood too quickly, and pain shot through her ankle. She cried out, then forced herself upright. "No more," she said. Eleanor stepped closer. "Emily, listen to me." Emily shook her head. "No, I quit. They can have the academy. They can have the audition. They can have the headlines. I just want my life back. Grace tried to answer, but suddenly her face changed. Her hand went to her chest. Emily saw it first. Mom. Grace's knees weakened. Charles rushed forward and caught her before she hit the floor. Emily screamed. Eleanor called for an ambulance. Vanessa stood frozen, tears running down her face. The phones kept buzzing with comments while Grace Carter lay unconscious on the studio floor. At the hospital, Emily sat outside the emergency room with her wrapped ankle stretched in front of her and both hands shaking in her lap. Charles stood across the hallway, silent for once. Vanessa sat far away, as if punishing herself with distance. Eleanor watched Emily the way a teacher watches a student standing at the edge of a decision that could shape the rest of her life. When the doctor finally came out, Emily jumped up. He said Grace was stable, but she had an underlying heart condition, and the stress had triggered an episode. If the pressure continued, it could become worse. Emily's relief collapsed into guilt. She turned toward Charles with tears in her eyes. "This is what your world does," she said. Charles did not argue. He only lowered his head and said, "I know." That answer made Emily cry harder, because for once, nobody was trying to soften the truth. Grace woke hours later in a quiet hospital room. Emily sat beside her, holding her hand like she was afraid her mother might vanish. "I'm sorry," Emily whispered. Grace looked at her daughter with tired eyes. "You didn't do this." Emily shook her head. "Every time I dance, something bad happens." Grace gave a weak smile. "No, baby. Every time you dance, the truth gets louder. That is why they are afraid." Then Grace asked Emily to close the door. From under her pillow, she pulled out an old envelope, yellowed at the edges and folded from years of being hidden. Emily opened it and stopped breathing. It was a National Ballet acceptance letter from 18 years earlier. Grace had been accepted when she was Emily's age. She had never told anyone. Not because she forgot, because remembering hurt too much. Emily looked at her mother, and the room became painfully quiet. Grace explained that she had been 17 when the letter arrived. She had believed, just for a moment, that life was about to open. Then she found out she was pregnant. Emily's father left soon after, and Grace had to choose between chasing a dream and keeping her baby alive. She chose survival. She chose rent, food, work, and the child growing inside her. She told Emily she never regretted her, not once, but she did grieve the life she left behind. Emily cried silently, holding the letter as if it were a piece of her mother's heart. Grace reached up and touched her face. "I buried my dreams so you could live," she whispered. "But do not bury both our dreams, because cruel people are loud." Emily pressed her forehead to Grace's hand. For the first time since the fall, she did not think about Victor, Vanessa, or the academy. She thought about all the women who had swallowed their dreams so their children could breathe. Outside the room, Charles had heard enough to break him. He walked away before anyone could see him wipe his face, but Eleanor followed. She found him near the vending machines, staring at nothing. "Grace gave up ballet," he said quietly. Eleanor nodded. "Many women give up beautiful things. The world rarely builds statues for that." Charles closed his eyes. "I thought helping Emily could make up for what I missed with Lily." Eleanor's voice stayed gentle but firm. "It cannot." Charles looked at her. She continued, "But it can still matter if you stop trying to redeem yourself and start protecting the child in front of you." Charles nodded slowly. That night, he called Mercer and told him to prepare for war, but not the kind fought with headlines. The kind fought with evidence. Mercer had already traced parts of the fake article. Victor had used contacts in media, and someone inside the academy had supplied private documents. The next morning, Vanessa waited outside Grace's room with swollen eyes. Emily came out and stopped when she saw her. Neither girl spoke at first. The distance between them was filled with every insult, every laugh, every cruel look Vanessa had once offered so easily. Vanessa finally said, "I gave Mercer the recording. I'll testify if I have to." Emily stared at her. "Why now?" Vanessa swallowed. "Because I wanted to be important so badly that I let people hurt you. And now I see what that made me." Emily did not forgive her in that moment. Forgiveness was too large and too clean for what had happened. But she did something harder. She told Vanessa the truth. "I hated what you did," Emily said. "But I know what fear looks like now. So choose. Stand with me, or move out of my way." Vanessa nodded. "I'm with you." For the first time, Emily believed she might mean it. Mercer soon confirmed that the National Youth Committee might reinstate Emily if they received the recording, medical documentation, the erased footage report, and proof that the article was planted. But he also warned them that Victor was not finished. A message from one of Mercer's investigators revealed Victor had contacted someone about Emily's return rehearsal. Charles looked at Eleanor. Eleanor understood instantly. Then we give him one. Emily frowned. Grace, still in the hospital bed, objected immediately when she heard the plan. No, she said. My daughter is not bait. Emily stepped closer. Mom, they keep deciding what room I can stand in. I need to walk into one on my own. Grace's eyes filled. You are hurt. Emily nodded. I'm scared too, but I'm more tired of hiding. Grace looked at her for a long time, then whispered, Then you do not go alone. The trap was simple. A fake notice quietly spread through academy channels. Emily Carter would return for a private rehearsal before the committee made its final decision. Only a few people were supposed to know. That was the test. If Victor heard about it, they would know the leak still ran through the academy. By evening, he had heard. Hidden cameras were placed in the studio and locker area. Mercer arrived with officers waiting out of sight. Charles watched from the security room. Eleanor stood near the curtain. Vanessa stayed with Emily backstage, both of them silent. Emily wore practice shoes, but the real marked pair was left near the costume rack. The academy was dark and almost empty when a side door opened. Victor stepped inside, moving with the confidence of a man who believed he understood every hallway better than the people guarding it. He went straight to the rack. Victor pulled out a small blade. He bent over the shoe, and just before the blade touched the strap, Mercer stepped into the light and said, Don't move. Victor froze. Charles entered from the opposite side. Eleanor followed. Emily stepped out last. For the first time, Victor looked genuinely surprised. Then he smiled, trying to recover his arrogance. You think catching me changes the story? He asked. Emily looked at the blade in his hand. No, she said. It tells the truth. Victor laughed and said Emily had no idea how the world worked. He said people did not care about dancers, only stories. He said she had been useful when she was poor, inspirational when she was crying, and dangerous when she started saying no. Charles asked if Mr. Albright helped him erase the footage. Victor said nothing. Then officers brought in Albright from the hallway, where he had been caught trying to leave through a staff exit. With Mercer's evidence, Vanessa's recording, the hidden camera footage, and the traced article, the entire frame collapsed. Victor had leaked the first video, planted the fake article, arranged the complaint, and coordinated with Mr. Albright to erase footage and make Emily appear unstable. Several donor families had encouraged the effort because they feared the Academy's public image would shift away from legacy students and toward questions of access, bias, and exclusion. Vanessa's mother resigned from the board before she could be forced out, but her name still appeared in the evidence file. Mr. Albright was removed. Victor was arrested. The Academy announced an internal review, but the public did not accept soft language this time. The same internet that had turned on Emily now turned on the institution that tried to break her. Headlines changed. Comment sections changed. But Emily did not read them. She had finally learned that applause from strangers could not be the foundation of her life. The National Youth Committee reinstated Emily's evaluation 3 days later. Her ankle was healing, but Eleanor warned her that pain could not become pride. You do not dance injured to prove a point, she said. You dance only if your body can carry the truth safely. Emily trained carefully, slowly, differently. Grace came home from the hospital with strict instructions to rest, but she insisted on attending the audition. Charles offered private transport, medical support, anything Grace needed, but this time he asked instead of decided. Grace accepted only what was necessary. On the morning of the audition, Emily sat on the floor beside her mother's old ballet shoes. Grace had kept them hidden for years, wrapped in cloth. The satin was worn, the ribbons faded. Emily did not wear them. Instead, Eleanor helped sew a small piece of Grace's ribbon inside Emily's shoe, where no judge would see it, but Emily would feel it with every step. When Emily walked onto the national stage, the room was full of people who knew her name before they knew her work. Some had seen the video. Some had read the lies. Some had watched the truth come out. But Emily looked only at 3 faces: Grace in the front row, Charles behind her, and Eleanor near the side curtain. Vanessa stood in the back, holding flowers she was not sure she had the right to give. The music began. Emily took one breath and moved. She did not dance like the frightened girl from the first studio. She did not dance like the viral clip people had replayed until it no longer belonged to her. She danced with control earned through pain, with feeling protected by discipline, with grief and courage living in the same body. Every turn seemed to answer the red words on the mirror. Every step said she belonged because she had survived the room that rejected her. When the music ended, Emily stood still, chest rising, eyes wet but lifted. For one awful second, there was silence. Grace gripped the armrest. Charles lowered his head. Then one judge stood. Another followed. Then the room rose with them. Emily covered her mouth, but Eleanor whispered from the side, "Receive it." A senior judge approached and said, "Emily Carter, your technique is still growing. Your training path is unusual. Your story has been complicated by people who should have known better." Emily's heart pounded. The judge paused just long enough for fear to return. Then she said, "But your work is honest, disciplined, and unforgettable. Welcome." Grace broke down in tears. Charles closed his eyes as if keeping his promise had finally become something clean. Vanessa cried quietly in the back. Emily did not collapse this time. She stood tall. Months later, Whitmore Ballet Academy was no longer the same institution. Investigations continued. Policies changed. Donor influence was restricted. Student protection rules were rewritten. But Emily's life did not end inside that building. An international ballet school offered her a full scholarship with legal protections Mercer reviewed personally. Grace no longer cleaned the academy floors. Charles funded a community dance school in her name, not as charity for cameras, but as a promise with paperwork, independence, and grace in control. They called it Carter Academy of Dance. Its first students were girls whose parents could not afford elite training, girls who came in shy, loud, hopeful, wounded, brilliant, and unsure if beauty had room for them. Grace taught the youngest ones how to stand straight, how to listen to music, and how not to apologize for taking space. Emily visited between training sessions and watched her mother become the teacher she might have been all along. On the wall of Carter Academy, framed above the practice bar, were the words that had once tried to destroy Emily, rewritten into something stronger. You do not have to be born in the room to belong there. Vanessa came one afternoon with flowers and stood awkwardly at the entrance until Grace waved her in. Forgiveness did not arrive like a movie ending. It came slowly, through accountability, truth, and the choice to become better after being wrong. Charles remained in their lives, not as a replacement father, not as an owner of Emily's future, but as a man who had learned that helping someone meant giving them power, not taking their story. And Emily Carter, the cleaner's daughter they tried to frame, became the reason an academy had to face itself. So tell us in the comments, did Vanessa deserve forgiveness, or was her silence too dangerous to forget? If Emily's story moved you, like this video, subscribe, and comment. She belonged all along.